All right, let's talk some Knicks basketball. Andrew, obviously being executive producer for Knicks Film School, to which he does such an amazing job. Interesting week for the Knicks, because on Tuesday, after the Knicks were bounced from the in-season tournament by the Bucks, shooting guard Quentin Grimes said he was not happy with his role in the team's offense. He's the second Knickerbocker to complain about this in a couple of weeks. Grimes has struggled shooting the ball recently. Then we see the change Friday against Boston. Grimes removed from the starting lineup, Dante DiVincenzo in. Grimes played better. He was a little more aggressive in Friday's game. But here's the question for me. Who's to blame for Grimes not feeling involved in the offense right now? Because when you look at the starting unit, they've been playing well. Before he got moved out, I think there were 6.4 points per 100 possessions. The bench was 8.2 points per 100 possessions. It's pretty good for both units playing. But who's to blame when you have players saying, like Grimes, they're not feeling involved in the offense?
So there's no one culprit here. I do think the head coach shares a little bit of blame. I know everybody's been begging for a more diverse playbook where it's less of a heavy isolation, a read and react type of offense. I do think the starting five that Quentin Grimes was a part of, he's just stuck with three isolation players that aren't great passers. Like Jalen Brunson, he's a 6-foot guard that is an isolation machine that is really good in the half court in isolation. We see it in clutch time how good he is. The problem is sometimes he can have some tunnel vision. Speaking of tunnel vision, he also shares the court with Julius Randle. And look, R.J. Barrett got off to this incredible start to the season. Then he went out with a knee injury and some migraines, and that version of RJ has not existed since coming back from the from the migraines. And look, I think Grimes was always frustrated being the fourth option on offense with those starters. The second unit plays with a little more ball movement. There also seemed to be a chemistry with DiVincenzo when he'd play with, like, you talked about the lineup data.
Yeah.
The starting lineup was a +6, the bench was a +8. Put Josh Hart and DiVincenzo in with the starters, and it was +24. Switch out DiVincenzo for Quickly, it was +30. So, like, there were other options at the two guard, which then brings me to the humanity of Quentin Grimes. And what I saw was a player that anytime he touched the ball, it was hot potato. And like he wasn't rotating into space at times to create passing lanes. Like there's multiple people involved, whether it's Tibbs not calling plays for him, the playmakers not trying to find him, but also Quentin Grimes kind of being in his head. He's a third-year player. He's still pretty young. Like that is a normal thing, especially when you went down with a knee injury for a couple days, showed they have other options at your position. So my hope, I know the Celtics game put everybody down the dumps, but my hope is that we saw a version of Grimes that is a bit more aggressive, is in a system or with players that are much more easy to pass the ball to and going to look for him more. And, hopefully this gets squashed pretty easily.
Yeah, Knicks fans hoping that he's a bit more productive in his role off the bench. We'll see how long that stays, although good points by you bringing up the data with DiVincenzo playing with the starting unit and how that has looked. Okay, right now we got to assess the Knicks. We're at this really good point. We're at the quarter mark of the season. Knicks have played 21 games, 12-9 record. What's your evaluation of this team at this point in the season? Look, I know it's an interesting question because we're coming off them having back-to-back losses to the Bucks and the Celtics, so vibes are not that great with the Knicks right now. But what do you think of this Knicks team at this point in the season?
A little behind the scenes for everybody at home. We were originally going to do this a week ago, and I had to reschedule to today. If we had had this conversation a week ago and they had just come off their most impressive win of the season in Toronto, the vibes would have been so much better. That team, like, had 30 assists that night. It was a back-to-back against the tough Toronto team that had just ended the Suns' winning streak. And Randall looked amazing. The bench unit looked amazing. Like, RJ was passing. Like, they were just finding ways to really put the nail in the coffin on a team that they're better than. And then a week later, they played the two best teams in the conference, and it seems like a reality check has set in on the fan base. Like, oh, we're not as good as them. Like last year, the Bucks weren't as good, and we played them much closer. The Celtics, we beat them 3 out of 4 times, including both times up in Toronto Dominion, as I call it. Like, I don't call it the Garden. We can't call that arena in Boston the Garden. It's just against my religion, unfortunately.
Can't do that. I'm with you.
But, like, there is a clear frustration I sense from the fan base that what we thought this team was last year it's not replicable because of how much better Boston and Milwaukee got. And because of what happened in the play-in tournament, I keep calling it the play-in tournament, the in-season tournament, the Knicks ended up playing an extra game against those two teams. So I wonder what this team, really 10 games from now, well, let me backtrack. 12 games from now will be the real temperature check. They play 2 games against teams they should beat. They play Toronto again and then Utah. Their last 10 games of 2023 are against teams over 500. That will tell you. Like, it's not, they're 2 against Milwaukee. Those are the elite teams. They play Minnesota again. They play OKC. Get through that stretch, and you're 5-6 games over 500, still in the playoff hunt. Schedule lightens up. Your vibes will start to return. Where the Knicks are now, as far as the temperature check, I think the reality is starting to set in. We're battling for 3rd place at the moment. We're battling to be the 3 seed at best, maybe the 4 seed, maybe the 5th seed like they were last year. And, you know, transactional talk, there's going to be a talent upgrade eventually to this team that, you know, this front office has made no hidden agendas about what they're trying to do. So I know that I'm kind of all over the place, but it's because this team, the vibes have been all over the place. It's been as high as we're a conference finalist contender, and then this week almost brought that all crashing back down to reality that, no, we're, at best, we can get like a first-round win and call it a day. You know?
Yeah. And I think the thing right now is the Knicks are 2-9 at this point against teams with winning records. They are 0-5 against the Celtics and the Bucks. So I think fans, as you said, the vibe has been, all right, maybe we're just middle of the Eastern Conference, which I would like to note is not terrible when you have young players and assets like the Knicks do and draft picks. It's not a bad place to be in the middle. You don't want to be in the middle when you don't have the assets. That's when it's bad.
If they were the Bulls and they were just like stuck into this team, or if they were like Minnesota last year, there was a lot of questions about that team because they've gone all in on that roster. It's clearly paying dividends now, but where the Knicks are, there's clearly a move to be made, maybe a couple moves to be made. So their things may not be great at the moment, but we're like 2 wins away from it being like, all right, you know what, maybe we can win the conference final, get to a conference final. Why not? And who knows what happens like the rest of this week. I can see it already. They win against Toronto. They win a road game in Utah, and it's, all right, so Tibbs, Coach of the Year, like, look what he's doing with this team without a superstar.
Yeah, so. It's interesting. You know, the vibes can swing in many different directions.